as President Trump opens up to the idea of strikes on Venezuela and not just on unarmed drug boats suspected of carrying drugs in international waters, we figured it would be a good idea to take a look at what the South American country has in its arsenal and how it stacks up against the United States. On paper, the Bolivarian armed forces claim hundreds of thousands of troops, modern Russian fighter jets, missile systems, and even drone factories. But in reality, sanctions, corruption, and years of economic hardship have hollowed it out, turning one of Latin America's most ambitious militaries into a shell of its former self. Still, it would be a mistake to ignore Venezuela's armed forces entirely. Because while they may not be a peer adversary, they've cultivated strategic ties with countries like Russia, Iran, and China. They've threatened neighbors, run joint military exercises with US rivals, and leaned heavily into asymmetric tactics. Welcome back to Task and Purpose. I'm Kyle, and I'm really glad you're joining us here today, where we're going to break down what Venezuela's military actually looks like, what's real, what's for show, and why it still matters. But first, let's talk about D-brand phone cases. Now, usually when we get a sponsor, they send us talking points and I'll write up a script, we'll send it to them, they'll approve it, and I'll record it. D-brand, they sent us this. So they sent their new tank case for the iPhone 17, which, full disclosure, I don't have an iPhone 17. I had to buy this and I plan on returning it when I'm done with it because I'm a cheap bastard who has an iPhone 14. So like I said, this is the tank case and it's pretty nice, and I'll just go ahead and snap it right back into there. It's a nice case, good texture, feels strong, snaps right in as you just saw. They also have these prism screen protectors, and here they are in the box. I'll go ahead and take it out. It's pretty nice. They come with two. Look at that, two of them, real nice packaging too. So I'm gonna show you real quick how easy this is. I got the phone out already. I place it in right here. You really cannot screw this up because the buttons line up on the side. You might be able to see that. And then there's this little pull tab and you just pull it out. And then you squeegee it down with the squeegee that's in the package. It's pretty nice. So easy, a Marine could do it. If I've convinced you, go ahead to dbrand.com/taskandpurpose, where you can pick out a phone case like the tank or the grip or the ghost, and then add the prism screen protectors to your cart. And then as you're checking out, enter task and purpose to get 42% off the protectors. It's a really great deal. I mean, if you're gonna have a phone like this was $1,000. Why not put a case on it that'll keep it safe? Makes no sense not to. So anyways, if you're looking for a good case and you want to support the channel, go to dbrand.com/taskandpurpose. Use code taskandpurpose at checkout. Get 42% off. It's a great deal. Thank you, and thanks to dbrand for sponsoring this episode. Venezuela's military is officially called the Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana, or FANB. I nailed that one. That's what 4 years of high school Spanish looks like. It includes 5 branches: the Army, Navy, Air Force, National Guard, and the National Militia, which is essentially a state-aligned paramilitary. In the early 2000s, under Hugo Chavez, they went through something of a modernization effort, spending billions on Russian weapons. This included, but was not limited to, about 100,000 AK-103 rifles, 24 Su-30 jets, helicopters, about 92 T-72 tanks, surface-to-air missile batteries, and rocket artillery systems. Under Nicolas Maduro, the military has attempted to continue this modernization effort, but mostly has just become even more politicized. Its top ranks are filled with loyalists, and officers are expected to swear allegiance not just to the nation, but to the socialist revolution, which is a pretty malleable thing that they can just do whatever they want with. Over the years, there have been repeated purges of officers suspected of disloyalty, especially after the failed 2019 uprising. This is a place where performance has very little to do with promotion. Still, their military is estimated to include about 123,000 personnel, with about 8,000 reservists, and then they boast 200,000 militia members. But those numbers don't really mean a whole lot just on their own. After years of underfunding and poor logistics, many units probably couldn't even accomplish their assigned missions, and equipment is often cannibalized for parts, training cycles are irregular or non-existent, and morale is suspected to be really low. There are even credible reports that a lot of units are made up entirely of ghost soldiers so that their corrupt commanders can collect their paychecks. Some of you may remember this was reported to have happened in the Afghan National Army during our brief involvement in that country's freedom quest. Still, they boast jets, ships, tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, things that militaries typically have. Despite the institutional rot, they still do pose a threat, even though they don't really stand a chance against the United States in a head-to-head showdown. It still remains that they could get in some shots, and they certainly pose a serious threat to their more immediate neighbors in the region. If things were to come to blows between Venezuela and the United States, it's their air force that would probably be on the front line, so we're going to take a look at that first. Their prized possession is 24 Su-30 Mk2 multi-role fighters that they bought from Russia between 2006 and 2012. These are the export version of the Su-30 MKK, and they are twin-seat, twin-engine jets that are based on the Su-27 and optimized for air superiority, precision strike, and maritime strike. That's the important part. The closest US comparison is probably the F-15 Eagle. They can carry up to 8,000 kilograms of ordnance, or about 17,600 pounds, and that can include R-77 and R-73 air-to-air missiles, KH-31 anti-ship missiles, and other guided bombs. They have a top speed of over Mach 2 and a combat radius of 1,500 kilometers, or about 930 miles, making the Su-30 Mk2 one of the most capable jets in Latin America on paper. Now, accidents, sanctions choking off spare parts, and other issues have reduced the actual flying fleet to as low as 8 by some estimates, and other ones I saw were around like 21, so not as bad, but still not great. The Su-30 has proved capable in ground attack and bombing roles, but several have been allegedly shot down over Ukraine. Its air-to-air prowess has also been witnessed, some people say over Ukraine, but we do have confirmation that India used them against their brief spats against Pakistan recently. Venezuela also owns a few, like 3 F-16A and B variants that they had delivered to them in the early 1980s, but these are largely grounded due to lack of US support. The rest of their air fleet includes aircraft like the K-8W trainers from China, they have a small number of C-130 Hercules, and just a whole bunch of other fixed-wing and rotor aircraft. They got a ton of stuff. They do lack airborne early warning systems, aerial refueling capabilities, and modern ground control infrastructure. Their pilot training is also pretty inconsistent, and experienced aviators are becoming increasingly hard to come by. Venezuela's Navy once aspired to be a major regional maritime force, and today it's mostly stuck in port. Its surface fleet is anchored by 6 Lupo-class frigates purchased from Italy in the late 1970s. These 2,500-ton ships were built for anti-submarine warfare and general escort duties. When new, they carried a 127mm main gun, automatic anti-ship missiles, and a speed surface-to-air missiles. I think I said that right. Maybe it's a speed A. I don't know. Roast me in the comments. Today, though, most of those systems are either inactive or obsolete, or a combination of both. Under the seas are 2 German-built Type 209 diesel-electric submarines. These were widely exported and are still considered stealthy and capable in other navies, but Venezuela's examples have not been overhauled in decades. At least one is believed to be non-functional, and both are likely restricted to limited port trials if they're operable at all. Their most modern vessels in the fleet are the Guaycama Kudu-class offshore patrol vessels built by Spain and delivered between 2011 and 2019. These are 2,200 patrol ships equipped with the 76mm main gun, and they're capable of helicopter operations. They're designed for more Coast Guard type stuff like border enforcement, counter-smuggling, that sort of thing. Not really high-end combat, but they are reportedly among the only ships still regularly operating in the Venezuelan Navy. Some of you may remember that in 2020, one of Venezuela's patrol crafts made international headlines after it collided with a civilian cruise liner that it was attempting to intercept, and it sank shortly thereafter while the cruise ship was fine. That was kind of a black eye on a navy who at one point was pretty formidable. Now let's look at what Venezuela has as far as anti-air capabilities. In 2005, they purchased 3 Chinese JYL-1 long-range 3D surveillance radar systems. These can search up to 25,000 meters up and about 320 kilometers out, feeding location data to the rest of whatever is integrated in their network. Part of that network is the Russian-made S-300VM system, known by NATO as the SA-23 Gladiator. It's the export cousin of Russia's own high-end S-300V4 system and was originally built to counter tactical ballistic missiles and aircraft. The S-300VM can engage targets at ranges up to 200 to 250 kilometers, depending on the missile variant, and at altitudes exceeding 30 kilometers, making it one of the most capable non-Western SAM systems in Latin America. Each battery includes multiple transporter erector launchers that can carry a variety of missiles depending on the mission. It has a phased array of radar and a mobile command post. While its range is impressive, Venezuela's S-300VM network is small with just 2 systems in a single air defense battalion. And in a constant theme in this video, they also likely suffer from maintenance challenges due to sanctions, lack of spare parts, and reduced training hours. Even so, it gives Venezuela a significant point defense capability around key sites like Caracas, major air bases, logistics hubs, things like that, and it does pose a serious threat to even 5th generation jets if they can somehow be ambushed. Venezuela also operates the Buck M2, which is a mobile, medium-range surface-to-air missile system. Each Buck M2 battery can engage targets at up to 45 to 50 kilometers and altitudes of 25 kilometers, with the ability to track and fire on multiple aircraft or cruise missiles simultaneously. It's equipped with active radar-guided 9M317 missiles and is far more capable than older systems in dealing with low-flying, highly maneuverable targets. It is less powerful than the S-300VM, but the Buck M2 fills a pretty important gap in Venezuela's layered air defenses and gives them a highly mobile system capable of protecting fielded forces or critical infrastructure. The S-125 Pecora, also known by NATO as the SA-3 Goa, I think I said all that right, roast me again, could face US aircraft as well. This is a much older Soviet-era air defense system because it was originally designed in the 60s as a static short to medium-range SAM used primarily for point defense. Venezuela's version is the modernized Pecora 2M, which can reportedly engage targets out to 35 kilometers with improved radar and missile performance. While it's no match for modern suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD capabilities, it still poses a threat to low-flying aircraft and drones, particularly in cluttered terrain or near urban areas. Rounding it all out is about 300 ZU-23 units. These are upgraded with rangefinders, infrared sights, and automatic target tracking. It's still completely outdated against modern jets or standoff weapons, but the ZU-23 remains dangerous to low-flying helicopters, drones, or slow aircraft, and has also been widely repurposed as a ground support weapon, mounted on technicals or trucks, which we all love, for terrestrial combat. Together, though, these systems form what's supposed to be a layered air defense network, though how well it functions under pressure is a big question. Right now, it doesn't really seem like the US is willing to open this up to conventional ground troops, and I say this on October 3rd at roughly 10:50 Eastern Standard Time, so that could change by the time this gets out there, but the conventional wisdom seems to be that we'll use overwhelming air and naval forces to really strike at Maduro's regime, which some people think is pretty fragile. So even though we aren't really worried about encountering them on the ground, we wanted to go over real quick what they have, so here it is. As we mentioned before, they have purchased 92 Russian T-72B1 tanks. Those come with 125mm main guns, explosive reactive armor, they can have upgraded sights. They're really not bad. Backing them up are about 80 French-made AMX-30s. Now, how many of these work, just like the T-72s, is a mystery. These are smaller, lighter, with smaller guns, not as capable as a T-72, but they do have roughly 80 of them. They also have BMP-3s, BTR-80s, MTLBs, and EE-9 armored cars that offer mobility but little protection against modern weapons. Artillery is thought to be primarily old BM-21 Grads and Uragans, with some old 105mm howitzers and other wheeled artillery. The rest of the ground forces are a hodgepodge that more or less represent the tumultuous history of the country. They have things from the US, France, Canada, the Soviet Union, Russia, China, Belgium, Sweden, Italy, the UK, Germany, Poland, and more. It really is just a ton of different things from a ton of different countries, just not in any meaningful quantities. Their troops are typically armed with AK-103 rifles produced under Russian license by Kavem. These are reliable and rugged, but the Army's main role remains mostly internal security, not high-intensity warfare. The best equipped troops serve often in the Presidential Guard unit, so while the force may look impressive on a parade, its ability to conduct war can rightfully be questioned. We also have to mention the militia, which they say is 3 million members strong. Maybe they're right. I don't know. That just seems like a lot. It's also not really a professional standing force. It's more of a hybrid between a civilian auxiliary, a regime-aligned political force, and a very casual reservist network. Members are often just neighborhood loyalists given a uniform, a rifle, and very basic instruction. The true danger, though, in engaging Venezuela directly with our military lies in not its military, but in its alliances with some countries that aren't too fond of the United States. Russia remains its largest arms supplier, having delivered aircraft, helicopters, air defense systems, and even provided military advisors. With their war machine currently very occupied in Ukraine, though, this support may not hold up if push comes to shove. Iran has taken on a more covert role, as they seem to prefer, reportedly helping Venezuela stand up their own domestic drone production, likely modeled on the Iranian Mohajer or Shahid lines. Several reports suggest Iranian technicians have helped train Venezuelan personnel in drone assembly and asymmetric tactics, though the actual scale of local production remains unclear. In 2021, Iran made a point of sending their naval vessels to Venezuela. Analysts at the time believed that it may have been a weapons transfer, possibly including fast attack craft that were shown on the deck in satellite imagery, but nothing was confirmed. But it's in these drones that Venezuela could really become a problem for the United States. As we've seen with engagements in the Red Sea, the Iron Dome over Israel, Ukraine, essentially everywhere now, just masses of small drones are a big problem. Even in the Red Sea fight, where the US had a lot of assets, ships, aircraft, even ground-based things, they were struggling to keep up with the volume of drones. It's not out there to think that Venezuela could overwhelm what assets the US has in the region if they send enough of these small drones. While early Mohajers were simple ISR platforms, newer variants like the 6 can carry guided munitions and operate at altitudes of 18,000 feet and hang out for about 12 hours. A swarm of low-cost drones doesn't have to sink a destroyer to be effective, it just has to get through and hit something. A single successful strike on a US ship or a forward deployed base could trigger an escalatory spiral. And then consider intercepting drones like these often requires expensive missiles or continuous radar tracking, creating a logistical imbalance. A handful of $30,000 drones can easily exhaust a multi-million-dollar supply of missiles. For Venezuela and its partners, that math adds up. Even if intercepted, the drones would force the US to expend time, attention, and munitions, which creates an asymmetric drain that could turn a tactical nuisance into a strategic distraction. And don't forget about support from China, where they've exported dual-use technologies like surveillance infrastructure, radars, transport aircraft, and vehicles. Venezuela has also hosted military exchanges or joint drills with all of these nations since 2019. These relationships give the Maduro regime a backdoor to spare parts, training, and symbolic deterrence, even under heavy Western sanctions. But so far, all this support has not really fundamentally altered Venezuela's ability to project military power beyond its borders. Put very simply, Venezuela is not a conventional military threat to the United States. There are honestly just few countries who are. One squadron of US fighter aircraft could, theoretically, wipe out the entire Venezuelan Air Force. With integrated networks and aircraft like the F-35, all those anti-air sites are pretty easy to spot, and with standoff munitions, they can be destroyed without even putting a pilot in serious danger. But the Venezuelan armed forces continue to support the regime's survival. They conduct repression, control borders, and manage key economic infrastructure. They've made multiple territorial threats against their neighbors, including against Guyana and their oil-rich Essequibo region. And even if they don't really do anything to anybody else, they allow Russia, Iran, and China to keep one foot in what America considers its backyard. Even a weak military matters when it props up an authoritarian regime and gives adversaries access to strategic geography. While it may be a hollowed-out force, it can still function as a proxy lever, escalate a border crisis, suppress a protest movement, or open the door to foreign intervention. Hopefully though, and I mean this sincerely, hopefully though we never really have to see the US military square off against Venezuela, but if we do, this is what we will be facing. I wrote the script, Savvy edited the video, and I wanted to say thank you one more time to D-Brand for sponsoring this episode. Today I'm wearing the Claymore patent shirt, which you can buy at store.taskandpurpose.com. Use code ACTUALLYWATCH for 25% off. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot else except to say thank you for everyone who's watching, supporting, buying merch, even though you don't have to. Just basically being here with us. I do really appreciate it. I am Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed, and I will see you next time.